Let's go through the past paper questions that cover the content from lessons 1 and 2 from Unit B3, Infection and Response. Please make sure that you've had a go at these questions already. It's not going to be that helpful if you just get the answers. You need to have a go on your own. We are going to go through the answers to the past paper questions that I set for you that cover the content from lessons 1 and 2 from the B3 Infection and Response unit. Please make sure that you've had a go at these questions already. You're going to get a lot more out of this if you try and answer them yourself and then go through the answers with me rather than just watching the answers. So here we go. Question 1. Viruses and bacteria cause diseases in humans. Draw a ring around the correct word to complete the sentence. Nice, easy one to start off with. Organisms that cause disease are called pathogens. And if we wanted to be slightly more specific, we could even say that they are microorganisms that cause disease. Question B. In August 2011, the United Nations gave a warning that there was a new strain of the bird flu virus in China. Bird flu may kill humans. The new strain of the bird flu virus could cause a pandemic very quickly. What is a pandemic? A disease affecting the people in one country, a disease affecting hundreds of people, or a disease affecting people in many countries. Well, a disease affecting the people in one country is called an epidemic, whereas a disease affecting people in many countries is a pandemic. The swine flu virus is carried by pigs. The bird flu virus is likely to spread much more quickly than the swine flu virus. Suggest one reason why. Well, if it's the birds that are spreading the disease and the pigs that are spreading the disease, what's going to be the big difference between birds and pigs? It is that birds can fly. So they're going to be able to travel much further distances, which means they can spread the disease a lot more quickly. As far as I know, pigs still can't fly, so birds can fly, so can spread the disease further. You could also write something along the lines of birds are harder to confine or contain, control, than the pigs are. Question 2. Eating food containing salmonella bacteria can cause illness. 2 symptoms of infection by salmonella are vomiting and diarrhea. What causes these symptoms? So what is it that is causing the symptoms of vomiting and diarrhea? We know that salmonella is a bacteria. We know that even if it didn't say it in the question, because it's one of the diseases that we need to know off by heart or memorize for the AQA spec. What causes the symptoms? How do bacteria cause disease? They release toxins. Give 2 ways a person with a mild infection of salmonella can help prevent the spread of bacteria to other people. Well, we know from what we know about salmonella, but also from the question, that eating food is going to be an important way that it is spread. So one thing that we could say is that the person should wash their hands before they are preparing food. Not sure if that green is going to show up. We can do it in black. Another thing we could say is ways to prevent the spread of disease. So good hygiene, washing the hands before preparing the food. If you had just written good hygiene, you wouldn't get the marks on this question. You have to be a little more specific than that. Another way that we can prevent or slow the spread of disease is by isolating the infected individuals. So don't let them anywhere near the food. You could also say things like don't share utensils or don't share food with the person who's infected, or don't prepare food at all if you are infected. A person with AIDS may take longer than a healthy person to recover from a salmonella infection. Explain why. Well, we know AIDS comes from HIV, and when you get to the stage of AIDS after HIV, it means that the HIV, the human immunodeficiency virus, has weakened or destroyed the immune system. So there's one mark for saying that. So HIV has weakened the immune system. There's one mark. So there are fewer white blood cells to kill the bacteria. And you learn more about the white blood cells and the immune system in lesson number 3. Question 4, or E, Salmonella bacteria can be transmitted from chickens to humans. Chickens can be vaccinated to prevent the transmission of Salmonella bacteria to humans. Suggest one other way farmers could prevent the transmission of Salmonella from chickens to humans. So they've already said vaccinated, so you can't say vaccinate the chickens. Salmonella is a bacteria, so you could say give the chickens antibiotics to cure the Salmonella by killing the bacteria. So that would be one mark. You could also say, again, similar to what we said in B, isolate infected chickens so that they don't spread the disease to other chickens and to humans. Or you could even say just straight up destroy the infected chickens. So any of those three will get you the mark there. A restaurant owner employed a scientist to test the effectiveness of 2 kitchen cleaning liquids. The scientist took samples from 2 work surfaces before the surfaces had been cleaned with the cleaning liquids and after the surfaces had been cleaned with the cleaning liquids. The samples were then analyzed for the number of bacteria they contained, and the results are shown in figure 1. Which cleaning liquid is more effective? Give a reason for your answer. So let's take a close look at the graph here. First thing to note is that each of the little lines is going to count for 5. So that's 5 there. That would be 25. And then we can count and see the numbers for each of the bars. So let's do that. So we've counted up each of the bars. We've seen where it goes across. So now what we can do is see how many died in each case. So we start with the sink. We go from 140 down to 25, so that's going to be a drop of 115. If we go to the table, we went from around 260 to around 60, so that's going to be a drop of 200. Over on cleaning liquid B, we go from 160 to 20, so that's about 140. And if we go from around 245 to 40, we are looking at around 205. Looking back at our question, it is clear 115 versus 140. So 115 versus 140, 200 versus 205. That cleaning liquid B killed more bacteria, had a bigger effect on both of the surfaces. So it is cleaning liquid B, and there is a greater reduction in bacteria on both surfaces. And that is a lot of work for just 1 mark. Next question. Rose black spot is a disease of roses. What type of microorganism causes rose black spot? We talked about how in lesson 2 you just have to memorize the 7 diseases and the type of pathogen that causes them, as well as a little bit of information about them. So let's see what we remember. Bacteria are going to be Salmonella and Gonorrhea, so it's not that. Fungus is going to be rose black spot. Protist is Malaria. And virus is measles. HIV, and TMV. So it is the fungus. A virus called RSV causes severe respiratory disease. Suggests 2 precautions that a person with RSV could take to reduce the spread of the virus to other people. So looking at this question right away, you think to yourself, wait a minute, RSV, that's not one of the diseases that we need to know about. They're going to do this on the exams. They're going to give you information that you haven't had before. The answer isn't going to be about RSV, so you can almost cross that out. It doesn't matter. What matters is that it is a virus that causes severe respiratory disease and suggests 2 precautions. So really what this question is just how can you reduce the spread, right? So really simple answers again. Good hygiene, so regular hand washing. It could be cover your nose or mouth when sneezing or coughing. It's a respiratory disorder, so it's going to affect the lungs. So there's 2 already. We could say put tissues in the bin it. Could say don't kiss people. You could say isolate people. You could say don't share cutlery or cups or anything like that with people. Just all the stuff that we talked about in lesson 2 when we talked about preventing the spread of disease. Microorganisms can cause disease. Draw 1 line from each disease to the correct description. So again, this is one of those memorization ones. HIV can depress the immune system, so it's going to increase the risk of other disorders like pneumonia. Malaria has part of the life cycle including an insect. In this case, it's the mosquito. And then salmonella, the bacteria that causes food poisoning, can be spread by not washing hands thoroughly. Just as a note, a fungicide here kills fungus. If we look at the diseases, none of them are caused by a fungus. So that's a virus, that's a protist, that's a bacteria. So they've put that in to try and trip you up, probably getting people to think that malaria is caused by a fungus or something like that. Gonorrhea is a sexually transmitted disease. That's the other one besides salmonella that you need to know for bacteria. What are the symptoms of gonorrhea? They have to do with the genitals. It is pain when urinating and a yellow discharge from the penis or the vagina. The table below shows the number of people in the UK diagnosed with gonorrhea in different years. Use the data in the table to complete the graph below. The numbers for males have already been plotted. Only some of the numbers for females have been plotted. A lot of times when you guys get a question like this on a test or an exam, because there's not a space to write anything, you skip it and you throw away really, really easy marks. So this question is worth 3 marks. All that you need to do is complete the graph by plotting the missing data for females, and that's 3 whole marks. So let's have a go at doing that. The first thing to do, if we zoom in, is notice that each of these lines is going to be worth 1. Okay, so we have 2005, which was 5, 2007, which was 5, 2009 is going to be 5.5. So we're going to go to here. Then we have 6. We're going to go to here, and 7.5. So there's 5, 6, 7.5. Then going to join those together. And we get our marks. It's that easy. So a lot of you will have skipped that. Correctly plotted points is going to get you 2 marks for those 3 points. And then your line is going to get you your last mark. So if there's not a space to write something, do not automatically assume that there's just writing there for the sake of writing. If you see the marks, that means there's something you need to do. Look at the question carefully. Don't throw away easy marks. Every single year in the mocks and then the real exams, we see people making this silly mistake. Okay, next question. Describe the patterns in the numbers of males and females with gonorrhea from 2005 to 2013. Use the data in the graph. First thing that we want to notice here is that it says describe a graph. If it says describe a graph, it's just tell the story of the graph. Okay. You don't need to explain why males have more than females. All you need to do is look at the graph and make 3 valid points about it. Okay? So first thing that we can do if we're looking at it is, for the first 3 years in both males and females, so if we look in this area here, if we look in this area here, it's pretty level. Nothing really changes from 2005 to 2008. So for the first 3 years, it is very steady. In fact, it's very steady all the way up to 2009 even. After 2009, there is a rise. So in the males, there's a rise, and in the females, there's a rise. It's not as big in the females, but there is a rise. And then last but not least, it's really obvious from looking at the graph that there are cases of people with gonorrhea is much higher in males than it is in females. It starts higher in 2005, and the gap is even bigger by 2013. So there's 4 different things we could say there. Let's look at how to write those. The first one would be it is a steady or flat line until 2009. Then the line goes up, or the number of cases goes up in males and females. So there's 1 mark there, there's 2 marks there. They do say in males and females. And then last but not least, we can say the number of males is always higher than females. There's your 3rd mark. You could also say, if we look back at the graph, that the number of males who get gonorrhea goes up much faster, or the line is rising faster, has a steeper gradient than the females. You can get a mark that way as well. Question 6. A young child goes to school for the first time. Soon after, the child gets a cold and a sore throat. Explain as fully as you can what causes the child's illness. So literally we can ignore almost all of the question and say what causes the illness. A lot of people get this question wrong. They start talking about completely different things about the immune system of the child, the school. It doesn't really have anything to do with it. It's just asking what causes the illness. So 2 marks, but there's really 3 things we could say. Number 1, the pathogen gets into the body. If the pathogen doesn't get in, nothing's going to happen. So there's 1 mark. Number 2, the pathogen reproduces. 1 or 2 pathogens, they're tiny, aren't going to do anything. It's when they start reproducing like crazy. And then last but not least, they release toxins or cause damage to the cells. So 3 different ways that you can get those 2 marks. The doctor tells the child's mother that children often get ill when they start school and mix with other children. Why is a child more likely to get an infectious illness when he or she starts school? Well, when you start school, you're going to come into contact with more people than you would if you weren't in school, and then some of those people are going to be infected. So it is simply contact with infected people. The more people you come in contact with, the more likely you are to come into contact with somebody who has a pathogen and therefore get ill. Lungworm is an infection. Lungworm can kill dogs. It's caused by a small worm. The diagram below shows the life cycle of the lungworm. So the lungworm reproduces in the dog, infects the youngs, the lungs, sorry. The dog coughs up the larvae or the young version of the worm. The worm passes out into, the lungworm reproduces in the dog and infects the lungs. The larvae are coughed up and swallowed and then passed out of the dog in their feces, in their poop, and then picked up by snails, and then dogs find and touch or eat the snails. Again, nothing really here that you need to know. All the information that's required is within the question. What type of organism is represented by the snail in the life cycle of the lungworm? We have an example of this, Malaria, already, where you have a protist that lives inside two different organisms, and we say that the snail is the vector. Okay, the snail is not causing the disease. The snail is going to have the worm, the larvae of the worm on it. Okay, so it's not the fungus, it's not a protist, it's not a parasite. Remember, a parasite lives inside another animal. The snail doesn't go inside, except for when I guess it's eaten, but then it won't be alive, it'll be eaten. For B, suggest how the spread of lungworm disease can be prevented. Well, it's going to be mostly about the snail, right? So number one, if you destroy the snails, then the lungworm larvae can't be picked up because the snails aren't there. You could say isolate infected dogs so that they don't poop in an area where there's lots of snails and other dogs can come and eat the snails. Isolate infected dogs, not infected snails. You could say that you should tell people to pick up their dog poop after the dog poops so that snails don't get into it. And last but not least, you could, of course, treat infected dogs or even vaccinate them so that this doesn't become an issue for them. Last one, malaria is a disease spread by mosquitoes. Describe 2 ways to control the spread of malaria. Well, very similar to the question we just had. The first thing you could do is destroy mosquitoes or prevent mosquitoes from breeding. If you can't destroy the mosquitoes, what you need to do is make sure that you don't get bitten by the mosquitoes. There's a couple ways of doing that. You can prevent mosquitoes from biting people. There's a couple of different ways of doing that. You could use mosquito nets, or you could use insect repellent or mosquito repellent. Whoops. Okay, so 2 marks there. One for saying that you're going to directly affect the mosquitoes by reducing their population number, either by destroying them or preventing them from reproducing. And the other one is preventing them from biting people, so by mosquito nets or insect repellent or something like that. Thank you very much. Hopefully you got most of these right. I will see you for lesson 3, which is going to be on the immune response. Bye-bye.